The ruthless billionaire CEO beat his wife because of his mistress, but she had an abortion and he regretted it. Welcome to Mr. Peter Stories. Merry Christmas, dear friend. We're thrilled to have you here to celebrate this season of love, joy, and magic. Before we dive into today's special tale, we'd love to know more about you. What's your name? Are you a regular visitor, or is this your first time with us? Every story is more meaningful when shared with wonderful people like you. So, whether you're a long-time friend or a first-time guest, know that you're truly welcome here. Now let's embark on a journey filled with heartwarming moments, unexpected surprises, and memories that will stay with you forever. Thank you for being part of our storytelling family. Let's begin this magical tale together. The autumn breeze swept through San Francisco's financial district as Dr. Olivia Bennett hurried up the gleaming steps of the Masterson Convention Center. Her natural curls, usually carefully maintained, had begun to escape their elegant updo after a marathon surgery that morning. The Innovation in Medical Technology conference wasn't something she'd typically attend, but as head of neurosurgery at Stanford Medical Center, her presence was expected. The grand ballroom buzzed with the energy of hundreds of brilliant minds, doctors, tech innovators, and investors, all mingling in a sea of expensive suits and cocktail dresses. Olivia smoothed down her emerald silk dress, a rare departure from her usual scrubs, feeling somewhat out of place among the tech elite. At 32, she'd earned her position through relentless dedication and natural talent, not family connections or inherited wealth. "Dr. Bennett," called out her colleague, Dr. Sarah, waving from near the bar. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't make it. That temporal lobe resection ran longer than expected," Olivia explained, accepting a glass of champagne. "The tumor had more extensive involvement than the imaging suggested." "Always the perfectionist," Sarah smiled. "But you're here now, and there's someone you absolutely need to meet. James Richardson is speaking about his company's new neural interface technology, and it could revolutionize your work." Olivia had heard of Richardson Technologies, of course. Everyone had. Their innovations in artificial intelligence and medical technology had made them a household name. She'd even used some of their surgical imaging systems in her operating room. But she'd never met the man behind the empire. The lights dimmed and a spotlight illuminated the stage. James Richardson III stepped up to the podium, his presence commanding immediate attention. At 38, he cut an impressive figure, tall and athletic, with dark hair graying slightly at the temples in a way that only added to his magnetism. His charcoal suit was clearly bespoke, but it was his eyes that caught Olivia's attention, intense and intelligent, scanning the crowd as he began to speak. "The future of medicine," his rich baritone filled the room, "lies not in treating illness, but in preventing it entirely. Today, I'm excited to share how Richardson Technologies is making that future a reality." For the next 45 minutes, Olivia found herself completely absorbed. James's presentation wasn't just technically brilliant, it was passionate, articulating a vision of medical technology that aligned perfectly with her own dreams of advancing neurosurgical treatment. His proposed neural interface could potentially allow real-time monitoring of brain activity with unprecedented precision. During the Q&A session, Olivia raised her hand. "Dr. Olivia Bennett, head of neurosurgery at Stanford Medical. Your interface shows promise, but have you considered the implications for patients with compromised blood-brain barriers?" James paused, studying her with interest. "An excellent question, Dr. Bennett. In fact, we've been developing a modified version specifically for such cases." He proceeded to outline an approach that demonstrated deep understanding of both the technology and medical concerns. After the presentation, Olivia found herself surrounded by colleagues eager to discuss the implications of Richardson's technology. She was so engrossed in a debate about potential applications in epilepsy treatment that she didn't notice James approaching until he was standing right beside her. "Dr. Bennett," he said, extending his hand. "I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on neural interface applications in complex surgical cases." Up close, his presence was even more imposing. His cologne carried notes of cedar and bergamot, and his handshake was firm but not aggressive. "Mr. Richardson," she responded, meeting his gaze steadily, "your presentation was fascinating, though I have some concerns about the practical implementation in high-risk procedures." "Please call me James," he smiled, and something in that smile made her heart skip a beat. "Would you join me for dinner? I'd appreciate your insights, and I know a quiet place where we could discuss this properly." Olivia hesitated. She had rounds early the next morning, and normally she would never consider a last-minute dinner invitation, but something about James intrigued her. Perhaps it was the genuine interest he showed in her medical opinions, or the way he seemed to look past her beauty to engage with her intellect. "I know a small Italian place just around the corner," he added. "Best risotto in the city, and they're always discreet with their high-profile guests." "I should warn you," Olivia said, surprising herself with a playful smile. "I'm not easily impressed by status or wealth. My interest is purely professional." James's laugh was genuine, reaching his eyes. "I wouldn't have it any other way, Dr. Bennett. Shall we?" As they left the convention center, neither could have predicted how this simple dinner would change their lives forever. Olivia, focused on her career and proud of her independence, had never imagined falling for someone like James Richardson III. And James, despite his wealth and success, had never met anyone quite like Olivia. Brilliant, genuine, and completely unimpressed by his billions. The city lights twinkled around them as they walked to the restaurant, their conversation flowing effortlessly from medical technology to their personal passions. Neither noticed the passing time, too caught up in their unexpected connection. It was just the beginning of their story, a perfect moment before the complications of reality would test their budding romance. That evening, as Olivia finally returned home in the early hours of the morning, her phone buzzed with a text from James. "Thank you for a memorable evening. Your insights were invaluable. Dinner again next week. There's so much more I'd like to discuss." Staring at the message, Olivia felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Her rational mind warned her about getting involved with someone from such a different world, but her heart was already racing ahead. Little did she know that this was the first chapter of a story that would test her strength, challenge her beliefs, and ultimately change her life forever. As she drifted off to sleep, the memory of James's intense gaze and passionate vision for the future played through her mind. Tomorrow would bring new surgeries, new challenges, and new decisions. But for now, she allowed herself to dream of possibilities she'd never considered before. The seeds of their relationship had been planted. In the sterile halls of a medical conference, over discussions of neural interfaces and brain chemistry. It seemed perfect on paper. The brilliant neurosurgeon and the visionary tech CEO, both dedicated to advancing medical science. But life rarely follows the perfect script, and the story that would unfold from this beginning would test them both in ways they could never have imagined. Chapter 2. Whirlwind Romance. Spring blossomed in San Francisco, painting the city in vibrant hues that seemed to mirror the growing romance between Olivia Bennett and James Richardson III. 3 months had passed since their first meeting, and their connection had deepened with each passing day. Tonight, as Olivia stood before her bedroom mirror, adjusting her midnight blue evening gown, she could hardly recognize the woman she'd become. "You're actually humming," observed her best friend Emma Martinez, sprawled across Olivia's bed. "I haven't seen you this happy since you performed your first solo surgery." Olivia touched the diamond earrings James had surprised her with last week. Elegant but not ostentatious, perfectly matching her taste. Is it crazy that everything feels different with him? The way he looks at me, Emma. It's like he sees every part of me, not just the surgeon or the woman, but everything. Just remember, Emma said, sitting up with concern in her dark eyes. You're still Dr. Olivia Bennett, the youngest head of neurosurgery Stanford's ever had. Don't lose yourself in his world. That's what makes James different, Olivia replied, applying a final touch of lipstick. He values my career as much as I do. Last week, he cleared his entire schedule to watch me perform that experimental procedure I've been developing. The doorbell chimed, and Olivia's heart skipped. Even after countless dates, James's presence still thrilled her. She descended the stairs of her modernist townhouse, modest by his standards, but bought with her own success, to find him standing in her doorway, devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo. Beautiful doesn't begin to describe you, James murmured, pulling her close for a kiss that made her glad she'd opted for long-wearing lipstick. His hand traced the curve of her spine, and she caught that familiar scent of cedar and bergamot that now meant home to her. "Ready for your surprise?" he asked, eyes twinkling with boyish excitement that few besides her ever saw. The hard-driving CEO melted away when they were alone, revealing a man who could spend hours discussing neuroscience or debating philosophy. "James Richardson III, what are you plotting?" she laughed, accepting his arm as he led her to the waiting Bentley. "You'll see." He smiled mysteriously as his driver, Marcus, pulled away from the curb. The car wound through the city, eventually turning onto the private road, leading to the San Francisco International Airport's executive terminal. A sleek Gulfstream G650 waited on the tarmac, its engines already humming. "James?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "I thought we'd have dinner in Paris," he said casually, watching her face light up. "You mentioned never having seen the Louvre, and I have that neural interface presentation at the European Medical Innovation Summit next week. Why not make a weekend of it?" Hours later, they were flying over the Atlantic, the cabin lights dimmed to a soft glow. Olivia curled against James on the plush leather sofa, their empty champagne glasses forgotten on the table. "Tell me something you've never told anyone else," she murmured, tracing patterns on his hand. James was quiet for a moment, his fingers playing with her curls. "I'm terrified of disappointing my father's legacy," he finally admitted. "Everything he built, everything he dreamed for Richardson Technologies, sometimes the weight of it feels crushing." Olivia shifted to look into his eyes. "You're not just living up to his legacy, James. You're creating your own. What you're doing with medical technology will save countless lives." He kissed her then, soft and deep, and Olivia felt that now familiar surge of connection that went beyond physical attraction. This was understanding, acceptance, the recognition of two souls who'd found their match. The weekend unfolded like a dream. They wandered the streets of Paris hand in hand, James pointing out architectural details while Olivia shared stories from her residency years. At the Louvre, he arranged a private after-hours tour, and they stood alone before the Mona Lisa, debating whether her famous smile hinted at medical conditions modern neurology could have treated. Their last night found them in a tiny restaurant in Montmartre, the lights of Paris twinkling below. The owner, an old friend of James's family, had closed the place just for them. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," James said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Someone who challenges me, inspires me, makes me want to be better." "James," Olivia began, but he shook his head. "Let me finish. These past 3 months have shown me what I've been missing in my life. The way you light up talking about your patients, your dedication to healing, your brilliant mind. You've awakened something in me I thought I'd lost in building the company." He reached into his pocket, and Olivia's heart stopped as he withdrew a small blue velvet box. "I know it's fast," he said, opening it to reveal a stunning emerald-cut diamond ring. "But when you know, you know. Olivia Bennet, will you marry me?" Time seemed to stand still as Olivia stared at the ring, her medical mind automatically calculating carats while her heart raced. Was it too soon? They'd known each other only 3 months, yet in those months she'd felt more alive, more understood, more complete than ever before. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes!" James slipped the ring onto her finger, and as he pulled her in for a kiss, the restaurant staff burst into applause, appearing with champagne and dessert. The night swirled into a celebration of joy and promise, neither of them imagining how their perfect moment would eventually unravel. Back in San Francisco, their engagement announcement created a media frenzy. The tech world's most eligible bachelor marrying a brilliant neurosurgeon was irresistible to the press. Olivia found herself thrust into a world of charity galas and board meetings, but James made sure to protect her privacy and her career. They planned the wedding for late summer, a lavish but intimate affair at James's family estate in Napa Valley. Olivia threw herself into the preparations while maintaining her surgical schedule, and James expanded Richardson Technologies' medical division, creating a dedicated neuroscience research unit with her input. Their days fell into a pleasant rhythm, morning coffee together when their schedules allowed, late-night discussions about their latest projects, weekend escapes to James's beach house in Carmel. He surprised her with thoughtful gifts, rare medical texts, a restored antique microscope, a custom-designed surgical tool based on her suggestions. Emma watched her friend's whirlwind romance with a mixture of joy and concern. "It's like a fairy tale," she said one day over lunch. "Just remember, fairy tales usually have dragons before the happy ending." Olivia laughed off her friend's worry. "James isn't like that. You don't see him when we're alone. How gentle he is, how supportive. Did I tell you he's funding a new pediatric neurosurgery wing at Stanford?" As summer approached, their love seemed unshakable. Yet there were moments, tiny cracks in the perfect facade, that Olivia would later remember with painful clarity. The way James's jaw tightened when she challenged him in front of his board members. His insistence on hiring his own choice of wedding planner despite her preferences. The flash of something dark in his eyes when she mentioned cancelling a dinner party for an emergency surgery. But love has a way of painting over imperfections, and Olivia was deeply, irrevocably in love. She believed in their future, in the life they were building together. Their story was perfect on paper. The brilliant surgeon and the visionary CEO united in their passion for advancing medical science. The summer sun set golden over the bay, and Olivia Bennet dreamed of her approaching wedding day, unaware that the fairy tale was about to reveal its dragons, and that her Prince Charming harbored secrets that would shatter their perfect world into 1,000 glittering pieces. Chapter 3. Cracks in the Foundation. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Richardson mansion in Pacific Heights, casting long shadows across the imported marble floors. Olivia stood in their massive walk-in closet, her fingers trailing over the designer dresses that now filled her side. Chanel, Valentino, Dior, all gifts from James during their first 2 years of marriage. Her own clothes, the carefully chosen pieces from her surgeon's salary, had been gradually relegated to the back. "Mrs. Richardson?" The housekeeper's voice floated up from downstairs. "Mr. Richardson's executive assistant is here to discuss the charity gala arrangements." Olivia's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Sophia Maxwell. Again. "I'll be right down, Mrs. Chen." She found them in James's home office, her husband's tall frame bent over his desk as Sophia leaned in close, her perfectly manicured finger pointing at something on his laptop screen. The executive assistant's Bottega Veneta dress hugged every curve, her straight blonde hair falling like silk around her shoulders. "Good morning, Olivia," Sophia straightened, her red lips curving into a professional smile that never quite reached her eyes. "I was just showing James the proposed seating arrangements for next week's gala. The governor confirmed his attendance, so we needed to adjust things." "I thought we agreed I'd handle the seating arrangements," Olivia said, keeping her voice level, "given that it's a fundraiser for the new neurosurgery wing." James finally looked up, his face showing a flicker of annoyance. "Sophia has more experience with these events, darling. She knows the political dynamics better." There it was again, that subtle dismissal of her capabilities outside the operating room. Olivia swallowed her frustration. "I see. Well, I should get to the hospital. I have back-to-back surgeries today." "Actually," James interrupted, "I need you to attend the board meeting this afternoon. We're discussing the neural interface project, and your medical expertise would be valuable." "James, I have a teenage patient with an aggressive glioma. I can't reschedule." "I'm sure Dr. Chen can handle it," he said dismissively. "This meeting is crucial for the company's future." Sophia interjected smoothly. "I've already had my assistant call Dr. Chen. She's happy to take over the surgery." Olivia felt her blood pressure rise. Who were they to rearrange her surgical schedule without consulting her? "That patient and her family chose me as their surgeon. I made a commitment to them." "And you made a commitment to this family too." James's voice carried that edge now, the one that had been appearing more frequently lately. "Richardson Technologies isn't just a company. It's our legacy. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made." The word sacrifices hung in the air between them. How many had she already made? Moving into this mansion despite preferring her own home, attending endless corporate functions instead of medical conferences, watching her friendship with Emma fade as James subtly discouraged their time together. "Fine," she conceded, the fight draining from her. "I'll call the patient's family myself." As she turned to leave, she caught Sophia's reflection in the window, a tiny smirk playing at the corners of her mouth as she leaned over James's desk again, her perfume lingering in the air like a claim staked. The day unfolded in a series of small humiliations. The board meeting, where James interrupted her technical explanations to simplify them for the other members. Lunch with his mother, who never failed to mention how lucky Olivia was to have married into their family. An afternoon of watching. Sophia efficiently managed James's life while making it clear who really understood his world. That evening, Olivia sat alone in their vast kitchen, pushing food around her plate. James had texted, another late night at the office, with Sophia, no doubt, ordering dinner from that high-end sushi place they both loved. Her phone buzzed with a message from Emma. "Haven't heard from you in weeks. Everything okay?" Olivia stared at the text, remembering their last conversation. Emma had voiced concerns about James's controlling behavior, about how Olivia seemed to be losing herself. They'd argued, and Olivia had defended her husband fiercely. Now she wasn't so sure. Later that night, she lay awake in their California king bed, listening to James shower after finally coming home. His side of the bathroom counter held a new bottle of women's perfume, an expensive French brand she didn't wear. "A gift for my mother," he'd said when she noticed it last week. His mother, who was allergic to perfume. The changes had been so gradual, she realized. The way he began questioning her surgical decisions, suggesting she take on fewer complex cases. His insistence on having Sophia handle all their social arrangements. The subtle comments about her appearance, leading to a complete wardrobe overhaul. The growing distance between them, filled with expensive gifts instead of the deep conversations they used to have. She thought about their last, genuine moment of connection, nearly 6 months ago. They'd been watching the sunset from their balcony, drinking wine and discussing the future of neurosurgery. James had wrapped his arms around her from behind, kissing her neck as she explained her latest research. That James, the one who valued her mind, who looked at her with pride and desire, seemed to be fading away. The next morning, Olivia arrived early at the hospital, finding solace in the familiar sterility of her office. A stack of journals sat on her desk, the latest research she'd been neglecting in favor of corporate events. She began reading, losing herself in the comfort of medical terminology, when her phone chimed with a message from James. Sophia scheduled dinner with potential investors tonight. Wear the new Versace. Not a request, not even a question about her availability. Just another command from the man who had once asked her opinion on everything. Dr. Sarah knocked on her office door, concern evident on her face. "Olivia? Your hands are shaking. Are you all right to operate?" Olivia looked down, surprised to see her friend was right. "I'm fine," she said automatically, then paused. "Actually, no, I'm not fine." Sarah closed the door and sat down. "Talk to me. This isn't the brilliant surgeon I know. Something's wrong." For the next hour, Olivia poured out everything, the controlling behavior, the growing presence of Sophia, the way James had changed from her intellectual equal to someone who seemed to view her as an accessory to his success. "Classic signs of emotional manipulation," Sarah said quietly. "You know that, right? We see it in our patients' families all the time." "He's under a lot of pressure," Olivia defended automatically, then stopped herself. When had she started making excuses for him? The day passed in a blur of surgeries, her one remaining sanctuary. In the operating room, she was still Dr. Olivia Bennett, respected neurosurgeon. No one questioned her judgment here. No one tried to manage her decisions. That evening, she stood in front of their bedroom mirror, zipping up the Versace dress James had chosen. The woman staring back at her looked perfect. Exactly what a billionaire's wife should be, but somewhere along the way, she'd started losing the fire that had drawn James to her in the first place. Her phone buzzed again. "James. Running late. Sophia will meet you at the restaurant to review the investor profiles before I arrive." Something inside Olivia snapped. She thought about the old version of herself. The confident surgeon who had challenged James's ideas that first night, who had made him work for her attention. That woman wouldn't have accepted this slow erosion of her independence. She picked up her phone to decline, to take a stand. But another message appeared first. A photo, accidentally sent to her instead of its intended recipient. James and Sophia in his office, locked in an intimate embrace. The timestamp was from 20 minutes ago. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering on the marble floor as the perfect facade of her marriage finally shattered completely. All the little moments of doubt, the subtle signs she'd ignored, crashed over her like a tidal wave. The cracks in their foundation weren't just cracks anymore, they were chasms, and her life was about to change forever. Chapter 4. The Discovery. The photo blazed on Olivia's screen like a brand, burning away the last vestiges of denial she'd been clinging to. James and Sophia, his hands tangled in her blonde hair, her red lips pressed against his neck. The intimacy of the moment was undeniable. The Richardson Technologies logo gleamed on the wall behind them, a corporate backdrop to their betrayal. With trembling hands, Olivia sank onto their imported Italian leather sofa, her mind racing through hundreds of small moments that suddenly crystallized into painful clarity. The late nights at the office, the mysterious business trips, the way Sophia always seemed to know James's schedule better than his own wife. Her surgeon's training kicked in, the ability to think clearly in crisis, to examine evidence methodically. Opening her laptop, she began digging through their shared cloud storage, folders she'd never had reason to question before. There, hidden in plain sight under corporate events, she found hundreds of photos, James and Sophia at private dinners, on his yacht, entering hotel elevators. The timestamps showed an affair spanning months, perhaps longer. A text lit up her phone. Sophia. That photo was sent in error. James wants to explain. Please be discreet about this, Olivia. Think of the company's reputation. The condescension in those words made her blood boil. Think of the company's reputation? What about her reputation? Her dignity? Her marriage? Another message followed, this time from James. Coming home now. Don't do anything rash. We need to discuss this like rational adults. Rational adults, his favorite phrase whenever he wanted to dismiss her emotions, to frame her reactions as hysterical or unreasonable. Well, doctor, Olivia Bennett hadn't become one of the country's top neurosurgeons by being irrational. She moved through their bedroom methodically, gathering evidence. Credit card statements showing hotel charges in cities James claimed he'd never visited. Email threads between him and Sophia, buried in her medical research folder, the one place he'd never think to look. Private jet manifests with Sophia's name listed as corporate consultant. The house felt suddenly foreign, every luxury a mockery of what she'd sacrificed to be here. The Monet in the foyer, a surprising coincidence that Sophia had found it at auction, knowing it was James's favorite artist. The restored Aston Martin in the garage that Sophia had helped him select, despite Olivia's concerns about the cost. Her phone buzzed continuously. Emma, Sarah, even James's mother. News travelled fast in their social circle. She ignored them all, focusing instead on downloading and securing copies of everything she found. 3 years of marriage, reduced to a digital paper trail of deception. The sound of the front gate opening sent her heart racing. James's Bentley purred up the circular driveway, its headlights sweeping across the walls like searchlights. Olivia stood in their master bedroom, surrounded by the evidence of his infidelity, and waited. His footsteps echoed through the marble halls, confident even now. The bedroom door opened and there he stood, James Richardson III, billionaire CEO, her husband, his tie loosened, a faint trace of red lipstick visible on his collar. "Olivia," he began, his voice carrying that smooth boardroom authority she'd once found so attractive. "What you saw was a momentary indiscretion. Sophia and I—" "Save it," Olivia cut him off, her voice steady despite the tornado of emotions inside her. "How long?" "This isn't productive. We should discuss this tomorrow when we're both calmer." "How long, James?" He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of discomfort from a man who prided himself on perfect control. "It's complicated. The pressures of running a company of this size. You've been so focused on your surgery lately." "Don't you dare!" Olivia's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare try to blame your affair on my career. The career you knew about when you married me. The career that helps fuel your precious company's medical division. Be reasonable, Olivia. We can work through this. I'll have Sophia transferred to our European office. We'll start couples counseling. Think about what a divorce would do to the company's stock price, to your position at the hospital." The threats were there, wrapped in concern like poison in honey. She thought of the countless patients who trusted her, the groundbreaking procedures she'd pioneered. Would James really try to destroy her professional reputation to save face? One look at his eyes gave her the answer. The man she'd fallen in love with, the passionate innovator who'd spent hours discussing medical ethics with her, was gone, if he'd ever truly existed. In his place stood a stranger, calculating the cost-benefit analysis of their marriage's dissolution. "Did you ever love me?" The question escaped before she could stop it, hanging in the air between them like smoke. "Of course I loved you," he said, but his eyes flickered to his phone as it buzzed. Sophia, no doubt, waiting to hear how the confrontation was going. Olivia laughed, a hollow sound that echoed off the vaulted ceilings. You know what the saddest part is? I actually believed in us. In the work we were doing together, combining cutting-edge technology with practical medical applications, I thought we were building something meaningful. We still can. He stepped toward her, reaching out. The neural interface project needs you. The board respects your input. We can get past this. Keep building our legacy. Our legacy? She stepped back, disgust rising in her throat. You mean your legacy? I'm just another acquisition, aren't you? Another asset to be managed. Well, guess what, James? This asset is about to become a serious liability. His face hardened, the mask of contrition falling away. Think very carefully about your next move, Olivia. You signed ironclad prenuptial agreements. You have no proof of anything beyond one questionable photo. She smiled then, the same smile she gave difficult patients before explaining a complicated procedure. You know what makes a great surgeon, James? Attention to detail, documentation, keeping careful records. She gestured to her laptop where dozens of folders lay open, damning evidence glowing on the screen. The color drained from his face as he recognized email headers, timestamps, hotel receipts. His carefully orchestrated deception, laid bare by the same methodical approach that made her an excellent doctor. You'll never win against me in court, he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. I have the best lawyers in the country. And I have the truth. Now get out of my bedroom. Have your lawyers contact mine in the morning. This is my house, he snarled, his composure finally cracking. Actually, she picked up a document from the bed. This house is in a trust controlled by your mother. I wonder how she'll feel when she sees the evidence of you sleeping with your assistant in her family home. The same assistant who's been rearranging her prized art collection and making decisions about family events. James stood frozen, realizing too late that he'd underestimated his wife, not just her intelligence, but her strength. The qualities that had first attracted him to her were now being turned against him. You have no idea what you're starting, he warned, backing toward the door. No, James, I'm not starting anything. I'm ending it. Oh, and one more thing. She held up her phone, showing a recording app running. I think the board will be very interested in hearing your admission about transferring Sophia to hide the affair. Sexual harassment suits are so messy, aren't they? After he left, Olivia sank onto the edge of their bed. No, his bed now, and finally let the tears come. Not for the man who had just left, but for the woman she'd almost become. The strong, independent surgeon who had nearly been consumed by a world of corporate power plays and social manipulation. Her phone lit up with a text from Emma. I'm outside the gate. Security called me when they heard shouting. Need backup. Through her tears, Olivia smiled. It was time to reclaim her life, starting tonight. She typed back a response. Come up. Bring wine. We have some planning to do. The night stretched ahead, full of pain but also possibility. Tomorrow she would walk into her hospital with her head high, face the whispers and speculation with the same grace she showed in the operating room. She would rebuild, stronger than before, wiser for having seen the darkness behind the perfect facade. But tonight she would grieve for what was lost and begin to imagine what might be found in its place. Chapter 5. Confrontation. The Richardson mansion felt different in the pale light of dawn. Olivia had spent the night in her home office reviewing surgical cases and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Emma had stayed until midnight, helping her organize documents and providing the emotional support she desperately needed. Now, alone in the massive house, every sound echoed with memories of happier times. Her phone buzzed, a message from the hospital board. They wanted to meet regarding her position as head of neurosurgery. James's influence was already at work, just as he'd threatened. She deleted the message without responding. Today, she had a more important surgery scheduled, one that couldn't wait for corporate politics. As she gathered her medical journals, the sound of the front door opening made her freeze. James wasn't supposed to be here. His calendar always showed him having breakfast meetings on Thursdays. Then she heard it, the click of Sophia's heels on marble. "James?" Sophia's voice carried up the stairs. "Security said you were here." Olivia stepped out of her office, looking down at the blonde woman who'd helped destroy her marriage. "He's not here, Sophia, though I'm not surprised you have a key." Sophia startled, then quickly composed herself. "Olivia, I didn't expect. I just came to collect some corporate documents." "From our bedroom?" Olivia's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Or perhaps from the guest room where you've been sleeping with my husband?" "You're being emotional," Sophia said, reaching for her phone. "Let me call James." "Don't bother." Olivia descended the stairs slowly, her surgeon's calm masking the storm inside. "I've already copied all the corporate documents you might be looking for. Every email, every photo, every hotel receipt." Color drained from Sophia's perfect complexion. "Those are confidential company materials." "No, those are evidence of a long-term affair conducted on company time, using company resources." Olivia reached the bottom of the stairs. "Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? I'm a neurosurgeon, Sophia. I solve puzzles for a living." "You don't understand what you're dealing with." Sophia's professional mask slipped, revealing something harder beneath. "James and I—" The front door burst open, and James strode in, his face thunderous. "Sophia, I told you to wait for me." "Don't blame her, James," Olivia said coldly. "She's just following orders, isn't she? Like when you had her reorganize my surgical schedule, or when she conveniently booked herself on all your business trips." "That's enough." James's voice carried that dangerous edge she'd started noticing lately. "Sophia, wait in the car." "But James, now." The blonde hesitated, then clicked her way back outside, leaving husband and wife facing each other in the marble foyer. "I've been patient, Olivia," James began, loosening his tie. "I've offered reasonable solutions, but you're forcing my hand." "Reasonable?" Olivia laughed bitterly. "Like threatening my career, having your girlfriend manage my life, gaslighting me for months?" "Everything I did was for us." His voice rose. "The neural interface project needs both of us. The company, always the company." Olivia shot back. "What about our marriage? What about the trust you destroyed?" "Trust?" He stepped closer, towering over her. "You want to talk about trust, while you've been copying private corporate documents, planning to destroy everything I've built, everything you've built." The words exploded from her. "I helped build this. My research, my reputation, my connections. You used all of it to expand Richardson Technologies' medical division, and all while you were sleeping with your assistant." The slap came without warning, his hand connecting with her cheek with enough force to snap her head to the side. The sound echoed through the foyer like a gunshot. Time seemed to stop. Olivia touched her cheek, feeling the heat rising where his ring had caught her skin. In all their arguments, all their tensions, he'd never been physically violent. This was new territory, and they both knew it. James stared at his hand as if it belonged to someone else. "Olivia, I didn't mean—" "Get out." Her voice was deadly quiet. "Let me explain." "Get out." She grabbed a crystal vase from the side table, a wedding gift from his mother, and hurled it past his head. It shattered against the wall, sending shards of crystal raining down on the marble floor. James took a step back, shock written across his features. This wasn't the controlled professional woman he'd married. This was something raw and dangerous, a woman who'd finally reached her breaking point. "You're hysterical," he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "You need to calm down before you do something you'll regret." "The only thing I regret," Olivia said, her voice shaking with rage, "is ever believing you love me more than your precious company. Now get out before I call the police and show them the security footage of you assaulting me." His eyes darted to the ceiling cameras, another of his controlling measures, now turned against him. This isn't over. You're right about that. She pulled out her phone, finger hovering over the emergency call button. But the next time we speak, it will be through lawyers. He backed toward the door, straightening his tie in a futile attempt to regain control. Think about what you're throwing away. I already have. Now leave. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud. Olivia waited until she heard both cars pull away before letting her legs give out. She slid down the wall, surrounded by broken crystal, her cheek throbbing where he'd struck her. Her phone buzzed. Doctor? Sarah. You're late for pre-op. Everything okay? The message snapped her back to reality. She had a teenage patient waiting, a life to save. Personal crises would have to wait. Rising carefully, she caught her reflection in the foyer mirror. A red mark was beginning to bloom on her cheek. She touched it gently, remembering all the domestic violence victims she'd treated over the years. How many of them had stood where she was now, making excuses for the first time their partner struck them, not her, not Dr. Olivia Bennett. She moved quickly through the house, gathering what she needed: clothes, important documents, her medical credentials. In her home office, she transferred all the evidence she'd gathered to a secure cloud drive, then texted Emma, "It happened." He showed his true colors. "Need you to help me move out tonight." Her friend's response was immediate. "Already called a security company. They'll be at your place in an hour. I'm on my way to the hospital. Don't go back to the house alone." In the master bathroom, Olivia applied concealer to the mark on her cheek with steady surgeon's hands. She had a craniotomy scheduled in 40 minutes. Her patient needed her focused and calm, not distracted by her imploding marriage. As she drove to the hospital, her mind was already working several steps ahead. She'd need a restraining order, new security protocols at the hospital, a forensic accountant to trace James's financial misconduct. But first, she had a life to save in the operating room. The one place where she was still completely in control, where her skill and judgment were still unquestioned. Walking into the hospital, Olivia held her head high. Let them whisper, let them speculate. They would soon learn what James was about to discover. She wasn't just the billionaire's wife anymore. She was Dr. Olivia Bennett, and she was done being controlled. Her phone buzzed one last time. Sophia. This could still be resolved quietly. Think about your career. Olivia blocked the number without responding. In the attending's locker room, she changed into her scrubs, the familiar ritual calming her nerves. She caught her reflection in the mirror again, seeing past the concealed mark to the strength in her eyes. Dr. Bennett. A resident appeared at the door. Patients prepped and ready. She nodded, pulling on her surgical cap. Let's save a life. The doors to the OR swung open, and she stepped into her sanctuary. Here, in this sterile room with its bright lights and beeping monitors, she was not a victim. She was not a betrayed wife. She was a healer, a surgeon, a woman who held life and death in her skilled hands. And no one, not James, not Sophia, not all the lawyers and corporate power in the world, could take that away from her. Chapter 6. Hidden Blessing. The early morning light filtered through the blinds of Olivia's temporary apartment, casting thin stripes across the bathroom floor where she sat, staring at the 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test. 3 weeks had passed since the confrontation at the mansion. 3 weeks of lawyers' meetings, threatening phone calls, and sleepless nights. Now this. Her surgeon's mind automatically calculated the timing. About 8 weeks, probably from that last night before she discovered the affair, when James had come home early and they'd shared a rare moment of genuine connection. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Olivia?" Emma's voice called from the living room. "You've been in there for 20 minutes. I'm coming in." The door opened, and her best friend's eyes immediately fell to the test in Olivia's hands. "Oh, honey." "I can't be pregnant," Olivia whispered, her voice cracking. Not now. Not with everything that's happening. Emma sat down beside her on the cold tile floor, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Have you done a blood test to confirm? Olivia nodded. I ran it myself in the hospital lab yesterday. I needed to see it to believe it. Her hand drifted unconsciously to her stomach, where a life was growing. A tiny cluster of cells that would eventually become a person. As a doctor, she understood the biology perfectly. As a woman in crisis, she felt completely lost. James can't know, she said suddenly, gripping Emma's hand. Not yet. He'll use this to try to control me again. It's your choice, Liv, all of it. Whatever you decide, I'm here. The words hung in the air between them. Choice. Such a simple word for such a complex decision. Her phone buzzed, another email from James's lawyers demanding access to her research files. They were trying to build a case that her medical breakthroughs belonged to Richardson Technologies, despite her independent work before the marriage. I have surgery in 2 hours, Olivia said, pulling herself up from the floor. I need to focus on that right now. Are you sure you should be operating, with everything going on? The OR is the only place where I still feel like myself, Olivia replied, splashing water on her face. I need that today. At the hospital, Olivia moved through her rounds on autopilot, her mind churning with possibilities. A baby, a child who would be half her, half James. Would they have his eyes, her curls, his brilliant mind, her compassion? Dr. Bennett. Dr. Chen's voice broke through her thoughts. The latest MRI results for the Thompson case. Olivia forced herself to focus on the scans, on the immediate needs of her patients, but in quiet moments between consultations, her hand kept drifting to her abdomen. During a brief lunch break, she found herself in the hospital chapel, though she wasn't particularly religious. The quiet space offered a moment of peace, a chance to think clearly about her situation. Her phone buzzed again, this time a text from Sophia. James knows something's different. You can't hide forever. A wave of nausea hit her, though whether from the pregnancy or the stress, she couldn't tell. How did Sophia know? Had she been watching her? The thought of James's mistress monitoring her made her skin crawl. Another text followed, this one from James himself. We need to talk. Come to the house tonight. Just us. Delete my number, she typed back, then blocked him for the 100th time. He always seemed to find new numbers to contact her from. That evening, after her last surgery, Olivia sat in her office reviewing patient files when a knock at the door made her jump. Mrs. Richardson. It was James's mother, Eleanor, immaculately dressed as always. It's Dr. Bennett, Olivia corrected firmly. What are you doing here? Eleanor closed the door behind her, her perfectly manicured hands clutching her designer handbag. You're carrying my grandchild. Olivia's blood ran cold. How did you? I have sources at every hospital in the city, dear. Did you really think you could keep this quiet? Get out! Olivia's voice shook with anger. Patient privacy laws exist for a reason. I'll have your sources fired. Don't be dramatic, Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. I'm here to help. The Richardson name carries certain obligations. This child is none of your concern. Olivia cut her off, standing up. Your son gave up any right to be involved when he chose his assistant over his marriage. Affairs happen in our circles, Olivia. Discreet women understand this and adapt, but a child changes everything. Come back to the house. We can manage this situation appropriately. Manage this situation? Olivia laughed bitterly. Like you managed your own marriage? Turning a blind eye while your husband had 3 separate families across the country? Eleanor's face hardened. You have no right. I have every right. This is my body, my baby, my choice, and I choose to keep my child as far away from the Richardson family's toxic dynamics as possible. You're being foolish, Eleanor snapped. Think about the child's future, the opportunities, the connections, the manipulation, the emotional abuse, the expectation that infidelity and violence are acceptable as long as they're discreet. Olivia moved to open the door. Get out of my office before I call security. You'll regret this, Eleanor warned, gathering her dignity around her like a shield. James won't take this well. James lost the right to have any opinion about my life when he raised his hand to me. Olivia's voice was steel. Tell your son and his girlfriend to stay away from me and my baby. After Eleanor left, Olivia sank into her chair, hands trembling. She needed to think, to plan. The Richardsons would never stop trying to control this child's life, their heir, their legacy. She thought of James's rage, his increasing volatility. Could she risk bringing a child into that world? Her phone lit up with a text from Emma. Sarah told me about Eleanor's visit, coming to get you. Don't leave your office alone. Olivia touched her stomach again, feeling a fierce surge of protectiveness. Whatever she decided, it would be her choice, not influenced by James's money or his family's threats. A knock at her door made her tense, but it was just Dr. Chen. I heard raised voices, Sarah said, concern evident in her eyes. Are you okay? No, Olivia admitted, finally letting tears fall. I'm pregnant, Sarah, and I don't know what to do. Sarah closed the door and sat down, her face serious. Tell me what you need. Medical leave? Security escorts? Whatever it is, the hospital will support you. I need... Olivia wiped her eyes. I need to know my baby will be safe. From all of them. Then that's what we'll ensure happens, Sarah said firmly. You're not alone in this, Olivia. Whatever you decide. As night fell over the city, Olivia stood at her office window, one hand resting on her stomach. Below, she could see Emma's car pulling into the doctor's parking lot, coming to take her home. Her friend would stay with her tonight, help her plan her next moves. Her phone buzzed one final time. James. Mother told me. Come home. We can be a family. Olivia stared at the message, remembering the sting of his hand on her face, the coldness in his eyes when he threatened her career. She thought of the child growing inside her, innocent and vulnerable. No, she whispered, deleting the message. We'll make our own family, little one. And it will be built on love, not control. She gathered her things, ready to face whatever came next. She was Dr. Olivia Bennett, and she would protect her child, whether that meant fighting the Richardsons or making the heartbreaking decision to end the pregnancy. But whatever choice she made, it would be hers alone. Chapter 7. The Choice. The waiting room at the Women's Health Clinic felt surreal. Olivia sat between Emma and Sarah, her surgical scrubs traded for civilian clothes, her doctor's authority set aside. Today, she was just another patient facing an impossible decision. 2 weeks had passed since Eleanor's visit, 2 weeks of escalating harassment from the Richardson family. James had frozen their joint accounts. Sophia had spread rumors at the hospital about Olivia's mental stability. Private investigators followed her every move. Are you sure about this? Emma squeezed her hand. We can leave right now. Find another way. Olivia touched her still flat stomach, remembering last night's final attempt at negotiation. James had shown up at her apartment unannounced, alternating between threats and pleas. This is my child too, he'd said, his familiar cologne making her nauseous. I have rights. Rights? She'd shot back. Like the right to hit me, to control me, to destroy my career? His face had darkened. I made you, Olivia. Everything you have is because of me. Get out, she'd whispered, before I show the police the bruises from last time. But it was his parting words that had cemented her decision. That child is a Richardson. We'll make sure they know their real family, their real heritage. You'll never be able to keep them from us. Dr. Bennett, a nurse called, using her professional name as requested. We're ready for your consultation. The exam room was warm, decorated in soothing colors. Dr. Maria Martinez, an old friend from residency, greeted her with a hug. Olivia, she said softly, I wish we were meeting under different circumstances. So do I. Olivia's voice cracked. But I need to know my options. Maria sat down, opening a file. You're at 10 weeks. The ultrasound shows a healthy fetus. Are you sure you want to proceed with termination? Olivia closed her eyes, remembering all the dreams she'd had about motherhood, the nursery she'd planned in her head, the tiny scrubs she'd imagined buying, the hope of raising a child who combined the best of her and James. Show me, she whispered. Maria turned the ultrasound monitor. There, in grainy black and white, was the tiny form that could become her child. Perfect little limbs, a beating heart, the promise of a future. I always wanted to be a mother, Olivia said, tears falling freely now. But not like this. Not with him threatening to take them away, to poison them against me, to use them as a weapon. Whatever you decide, Maria said gently, it needs to be your choice. Not because of his threats, not because of fear. That's just it, Olivia wiped her eyes. I'm not choosing this because I'm afraid. I'm choosing it because I love them too much to bring them into this war. A knock at the door made them all jump. Sarah poked her head in. Olivia, James is in the building. Security's trying to stop him, but how did he know? Emma demanded. Sophia, Olivia said tiredly. She must have someone watching my appointments. Maria moved quickly. We have a protocol for this. There's a back exit through the staff area, but Olivia stood up, squaring her shoulders. No more running. Let him come. Olivia, Emma protested. He's dangerous. Yes, he is, Olivia agreed. That's exactly why I have to do this. James burst through the door moments later. Security guards closed behind. He looked wild, his usual perfect composure shattered. You can't do this, he panted. That's my heir you're carrying. An heir? Olivia laughed bitterly. Not a child to love, not a person to nurture, just another asset for the Richardson empire? I'll take you back, he pleaded, changing tactics. We can start over. Give our child the family they deserve. The family they deserve. Olivia's voice rose. Like the family you gave me. Violence, manipulation, constant surveillance. I've changed. No, you haven't. You're here right now trying to control my body, my choice. You violated my medical privacy, stalked me, threatened me. This is exactly why I can't have this baby. You don't mean that. He stepped closer. But Emma and Sarah moved between them. I do mean it, Olivia said firmly, because I already love this child too much to let them grow up watching their father abuse their mother, too much to let them become a pawn in your games, too much to risk them becoming like you. I'll fight you, he threatened. I'll tell everyone what you did. Your career will be over. Tell them, she challenged. Tell them how you hit your wife. How you stalked her to a medical clinic, how you tried to force her to carry a child under threat of violence. See how that plays in the press. Security finally caught up, grabbing James's arms. Mr. Richardson, you need to leave. This isn't over, he shouted as they dragged him away. You're nothing without me, Olivia, nothing. After he was gone, Olivia collapsed into a chair, shaking. Emma and Sarah held her while she sobbed, for the baby she wanted, for the marriage she'd lost, for the family that would never be. Do you want to reschedule? Maria asked gently. No. Olivia straightened up, wiping her eyes. I need to do this now, before he finds another way to stop me. The procedure itself was quick, performed with the same clinical efficiency she brought to her own surgeries. Maria held her hand throughout, whispering words of comfort as Olivia said goodbye to her almost child. Afterward, in the recovery room, Emma broke the silence. He'll never forgive you for this. I know, Olivia said quietly, "but I'll never forgive him for making this necessary." Sarah returned with paperwork, restraining orders, police reports, documentation of harassment. "We'll file everything today. He won't be able to come near you again." Olivia nodded, too exhausted for words. Her body felt empty, her heart raw, but beneath the grief was a steely certainty that she'd made the right choice. That evening, in her apartment, she sat at her desk writing a letter she would never send. "My darling child, I want you to know that you were loved. So loved that I couldn't bear to bring you into a world of violence and control. So loved that I chose to let you go rather than watch you become a battlefield. So loved that I'll carry the weight of this decision forever. Maybe in another life, under different stars, I could have been the mother you deserved. Maybe there's a universe where your father was the man I thought I married, where we could have been the family I dreamed of. But in this life, my last act of motherly love is to protect you the only way I can. By letting you go before his darkness could touch you. By loving you enough to say goodbye. Forever in my heart. Mom." She sealed the letter in an envelope and placed it in a box with the ultrasound photo, a memorial to what might have been. Tomorrow, she would return to her surgeries, to saving other lives since she couldn't save this one. Tomorrow, she would begin rebuilding her life without the Richardson name or legacy. But tonight, she allowed herself to grieve for her almost child, for the family she'd wanted, for the mother she would never be. In the quiet of her apartment, far from James's rage and Sophia's schemes, she whispered a final goodbye to the future that died today. Her phone buzzed. A message from James. "You'll regret this forever." "No," she whispered to the empty room. "I'll regret loving you, but I'll never regret protecting my child from becoming like you." She blocked his number one final time, then called her lawyer. It was time to end this chapter of her life completely, time to rise from the ashes of what James Richardson had tried to destroy. Dr. Olivia Bennett had made her choice. Now she would live with it, grow from it, and eventually find peace in knowing that sometimes the greatest love means letting go. Chapter 8. Escape. 3 days after the procedure, Olivia sat in her lawyer's office, surrounded by documents that would dismantle her life with James piece by piece. Catherine, a top divorce attorney and Sarah's older sister, spread photos across her mahogany desk, evidence of James's abuse, screenshots of threats, medical records documenting injuries. "He's escalating," Catherine said, her sharp eyes studying Olivia's face. "The pregnancy termination pushed him over an edge. We need to move fast." Olivia nodded, touching the fading bruise on her wrist from James's last confrontation at the clinic. "What's our strategy?" "Shock and awe," Catherine smiled grimly. "While he's focused on punishing you for the pregnancy, we're going to hit him where it really hurts. His company." She pulled out a thick file. "Your research on neural interfaces, the ones Richardson Technologies claims ownership of? We found proof you developed the core concepts during your residency years before meeting James. The patents should be yours." "He'll fight it," Olivia warned. "Those patents are worth billions. Let him fight. Every minute he spends defending the patents is a minute he's not terrorizing you." Catherine leaned forward. "But first, we need to get you somewhere safe." Emma, who had been quietly taking notes, spoke up. "I've already started working on that. My cousin owns a security company." A knock interrupted them. Sarah entered, carrying a stack of medical files. "Sorry I'm late. Had to finish a surgery." She placed the files on Catherine's desk. "Here's everything from the hospital. Documentation of Olivia's work pre-James, proof of corporate interference, with patient care, records of Sophia accessing confidential medical files." Olivia felt a surge of gratitude for her friends. While she'd been recovering from the procedure, they'd been building an arsenal to protect her. "There's more," Sarah continued. Remember Lisa from oncology? Turns out James pulled the same routine with her 5 years ago. Affairs, gaslighting, professional sabotage. She's willing to testify. How many others? Olivia asked quietly. We've found 3 so far, all brilliant doctors or researchers, all professionally discredited after rejecting him. Catherine made notes. This changes everything. We're not just fighting a divorce case anymore. We're exposing a pattern of corporate abuse and medical ethics violations. He'll try to destroy the hospital's reputation, Olivia protested. All those patients. No, Emma cut in firmly. That's his voice in your head, making you responsible for his actions. The hospital board is already on our side. They've seen the evidence. Olivia's phone buzzed. Another text from Sophia. James knows what you're planning. Don't force his hand. She handed the phone to Catherine, who smirked. Perfect. Keep the threats coming, you ambitious little snake. The next few hours were a blur of strategy. Catherine's team had already prepared injunctions, restraining orders, and emergency motions. Sarah provided medical documentation of abuse patterns. Emma coordinated with security experts on safe houses and escape routes. What about my patients? Olivia asked, the surgeon in her still putting others first. Dr. Rodriguez is taking over your cases temporarily, Sarah assured her. We're telling everyone you're at a neurosurgery conference in Europe. Which brings us to the next step. Catherine pulled out a passport. You're actually going to Europe, but not for a conference. I have colleagues in Switzerland working on international patent protection for your research. I can't just leave. Yes, you can, Emma insisted. James has people watching the hospital, your apartment, even your favorite coffee shop. You need to disappear while we set everything in motion. When? Olivia asked, realizing they'd already planned this. Tonight, Catherine said firmly. My car is waiting outside with a decoy who looks like you. While James's people follow her, you'll leave through the service entrance with Emma. Private plane from a small airfield outside the city. Everything's arranged. Olivia thought of her apartment, her careers, her life in San Francisco. All my research already secured, Sarah patted a hard drive. Triple encrypted, backed up in multiple locations. James can't touch it. Your surgical videos too, Emma added. Every groundbreaking procedure, every innovation he tried to claim credit for. It's all safe. Catherine stood, her expression serious. Olivia, listen to me. James Richardson isn't just an abusive husband. He's a predator who uses his company to control and destroy talented women. You're not just fighting for yourself anymore. You're fighting for every other woman he might target. The weight of that responsibility settled on Olivia's shoulders, but instead of crushing her, it straightened her spine. She thought of her lost baby, of the choice she'd made to prevent another generation of Richardson abuse. What do you need me to do? The next few hours were precisely choreographed. While Catherine's team filed emergency motions, Emma helped Olivia pack a small bag, nothing suspicious, just enough for a supposed weekend trip. Sarah coordinated with hospital security to scrub visitor logs and surveillance footage. As dusk fell, Olivia stood in Catherine's office one last time, looking out over the city she'd called home. Her phone buzzed with a final message from James. You can't hide from me. You're still my wife. Ready? Emma touched her shoulder gently. Olivia took a deep breath, then removed her wedding ring. The diamond that had once represented love, now seeming as fake as James's promises. She placed it on Catherine's desk, along with the letter. James, you told me once that you made me, that everything I am is because of you. You were wrong. Everything I am is despite you. Every success you tried to claim, every innovation you tried to steal, Every part of me you tried to control. They were mine all along. You didn't make me, you tried to break me, but in trying to destroy me, you only revealed your own weakness. A truly strong man doesn't need to crush others to feel powerful. I won't hide. I won't cower. I'm leaving because I choose to, not because you force me to. And when I return, it will be to take back everything you stole. My patents, my reputation, and most importantly, my power. You thought terminating the pregnancy was my greatest act of defiance. You're wrong. This is me walking away, head high, ready to destroy the castle of lies you've built. Goodbye, James. May you one day understand that real power doesn't come from control, it comes from letting go. Dr. Olivia Bennett. She followed Emma through the law firm's service corridors, hearing Catherine's team spring into action behind her. By morning, James would face an avalanche of legal actions, media exposés, and corporate investigations. In the waiting car, Olivia looked back at the city skyline. The Richardson Technologies building dominated the view, its glass tower reflecting the setting sun like flames. "You okay?" Emma asked softly. "No," Olivia admitted, "but I will be." As the car pulled away, she thought of her almost child, hoping they would understand that this escape wasn't just for her. It was for every woman James had hurt, and every woman he might hurt in the future. Her phone buzzed one final time, an email from Sophia. But the subject line made her pause. "He did it to me too. I'll help you destroy him." Olivia smiled grimly as the city lights faded behind them. James had made a crucial mistake. He had underestimated not just her, but every woman he'd tried to control. Now they would show him true power, not the kind that breaks others, but the kind that builds them back stronger. The private airfield appeared ahead, a small plane waiting in the darkness. It would carry her away from everything she'd known, but also toward everything she could become. Ready to disappear? Emma squeezed her hand. Olivia thought of her letter to James, of the wedding ring left behind, of the baby she'd loved enough to let go. "No," she said firmly, ready to rise. Chapter 9. The Other Woman's Truth. The Geneva safe house overlooked Lake Léman, its discreet security features hidden behind elegant Swiss architecture. Olivia sat in the study, surrounded by legal documents, when her secure phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. "Sophia's evidence arrived. You need to see this." 2 weeks into her exile, Olivia had established a new routine. Mornings spent with patent attorneys, afternoons coordinating with Catherine's team, evenings processing the emotional wreckage of her marriage. But Sophia's promised revelations could change everything. "Are you sure about this?" Emma asked through the encrypted video call. "It could be another trap." Olivia studied the files Catherine had forwarded, medical records, police reports, emails spanning 5 years, all documenting a pattern of behavior that made her blood run cold. "It's real," she said quietly. "Look at the dates. Sophia was being abused by James long before I came into the picture." The evidence was damning. Photos of bruises Sophia had documented but never reported. Emails showing James's escalating control over her life. Financial records proving how he'd trapped her with golden handcuffs, making her too dependent to leave. A new message appeared, from Sophia herself, requesting a secure video call. "I'll be right here," Emma assured her. One wrong word from her and we end it. Olivia accepted the call. Sophia's face appeared on screen, but not the polished executive assistant Olivia remembered. This woman looked exhausted, her perfect makeup absent, her designer clothes replaced by a simple sweater. "Thank you for agreeing to talk," Sophia began, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "I know you have every reason to hate me." "Why now?" Olivia asked directly. "Why help me after everything?" Sophia touched her collarbone unconsciously, where the neckline of her sweater didn't quite hide a fresh bruise. Because you did what I never could. You left. And when you did, when you showed that kind of strength. He hurt you again, Olivia finished, recognizing the gesture from her own habits. It was different this time, Sophia's voice cracked. After you escaped, after the pregnancy, he changed. The careful masks started slipping. 3 nights ago, he completely lost control. She pulled back her sleeve, revealing dark bruises in the shape of fingerprints. I always told myself I was special, that I had power over him. I was so wrong. Emma made a quiet sound of sympathy, reminding them of her presence. I know I don't deserve your help, Sophia continued. What I did to you, helping him gaslight you, monitoring your appointments. I'll have to live with that guilt forever. But I have everything, Olivia. Every document, every email, every conversation he thought was private. Why did you stay so long? Olivia asked, professional curiosity mixing with personal understanding. At first, it was ambition, Sophia admitted. I was 23, fresh out of business school, and he made me feel special. By the time I realized what he was, he had complete control over my career, my finances, my reputation, and then it was easier to help him destroy others than to admit he was destroying you, Olivia finished. Tears slid down Sophia's cheeks. When he targeted you, I told myself you deserved it, this brilliant surgeon, this woman who had everything I wanted. It was easier to hate you than to face what I'd become. What changed? Watching you choose to end the pregnancy rather than let him control another life. It forced me to see the truth. I wasn't his partner, I was his weapon. He used me to hurt you, just like he's used me to hurt others. Sophia reached for something off-screen, wincing at the movement. I found his private servers, records going back 15 years. You weren't the first doctor he married and destroyed. There were others, brilliant women he couldn't control, so he had to break. How many? Emma asked sharply. 3 marriages, all annulled or quietly divorced. 8 serious relationships, all ending in professional ruin for the women involved. And countless others he manipulated, threatened, or discredited. Olivia's mind raced, thinking of all the talented women who had mysteriously left the medical technology field over the years. We need to find them. Already started, Sophia said, holding up a flash drive. Everything's here. Names, dates, documentation, his entire pattern of destruction. Why should we trust you? Emma challenged. After everything you did. Because I'm dying. The words hung in the air like smoke. Sophia pushed back her hair, revealing a surgical scar near her temple. Stage 4 glioblastoma. The headache started just before you left. James knows. It's why he's gotten more violent. The idea of losing control of me, of all his secrets. How long? Olivia asked, doctor's instincts kicking in. 6 months, maybe less. Long enough to help bring him down, not long enough to face consequences. Convenient, isn't it? The bitter laugh turned into a cough, and Olivia saw the subtle signs her surgeon's eye had missed before. The slight tremor in Sophia's hands, the uneven pupil dilation, the careful way she held her head. Have you seen the progression scans? Olivia asked softly. Would you look at them? Sophia asked, vulnerability cracking through her composed facade. I know I don't deserve your help, but you're the best neurosurgeon in the country and I'm scared. Emma started to object, but Olivia held up a hand. Send them to my secure server. No promises, but I'll look. Thank you, Sophia whispered. The files on James are already on their way to Catherine. Use them however you need to. I've included my full confession, details of how I helped him, everything. You understand this goes public, Emma pressed. Your role in it all comes out. Good, Sophia said firmly. Let everyone see what he turns people into. Let them understand how he breaks strong women into weapons he can use against others. A noise off-screen made Sophia tense. "I have to go. He's having me followed, but I've learned all his tricks. I can get out, get to Switzerland." "Sophia," Olivia interrupted, "send me those scans first. Today." After the call ended, Emma stared at Olivia. "You're not seriously thinking of helping her?" "You didn't see what I saw in those scans," Olivia said quietly. "That type of glioblastoma. She wasn't lying about the timeline, and no one deserves to face that alone, not even her. She helped him hurt you, and now she's helping us stop him from hurting anyone else." Olivia stood, moving to the window overlooking the lake. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in revenge, but in breaking the cycle of abuse. Her secure phone buzzed again. The scans had arrived. Olivia studied them, her heart sinking. The tumor was aggressive, spreading in a pattern that made traditional surgery nearly impossible. Unless... She pulled up her research files, the innovative surgical techniques James had tried to steal. There was a possibility, a risky one, but perhaps a chance to save one more life before taking James down. "Catherine," she typed into the secure chat, "how quickly can we get Sophia to Geneva?" "You can't be serious," Emma protested. "I am." Olivia turned to her friend. "Because the strongest response to abuse isn't hurting others, it's healing them, even the ones who hurt us." She began making notes, surgical plans forming in her mind. "Get me an operating room at the private clinic. And Emma, call Sarah. I'll need her to assist." "Why are you really doing this?" Emma asked softly. Olivia thought of her lost baby, of the choice she'd made to break cycles of violence. Because healing Sophia isn't just about saving her life. It's about showing James that his true failure wasn't in losing control of us. It was in never understanding that real power comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. Her phone buzzed with Sophia's last message. "Whatever happens with the surgery, thank you for showing me there's another way to be strong." Outside, the Swiss sun sparkled on Lake Léman, its surface both beautiful and deep, like the complexities of healing from abuse. Olivia began preparing for the most challenging surgery of her career, not just to remove a tumor, but to help heal the wounds that turned victims into perpetrators. It would be her greatest act of defiance against James, taking the woman he'd twisted into a weapon and helping her find redemption, because sometimes the deepest healing comes from helping others heal, even those who once helped break us. Chapter 10. Media Storm. The headline exploded across every major news outlet simultaneously. Richardson Technologies CEO exposed, pattern of abuse, corporate fraud, and medical ethics violations. Olivia watched the story unfold from her Swiss clinic's recovery room, where Sophia lay sleeping after her groundbreaking surgery. The procedure had been successful, pushing the boundaries of neurosurgical innovation while giving James's former accomplice a second chance at life. "It's everywhere," Emma reported, scrolling through her tablet. "New York Times, Wall Street Journal, BBC, every major network." Catherine's media strategy worked perfectly. The story they'd carefully crafted was devastating in its comprehensiveness. 15 years of documented abuse, 3 destroyed marriages, dozens of brilliant women's careers ruined, corporate espionage, patent theft, medical ethics violations, and at the center of it all, James Richardson III, the tech world's golden boy, revealed as a predator. Sophia stirred, her bandaged head turning toward the television where CNBC was showing Richardson Technologies' stock price in free fall. "How bad is it?" "The board called an emergency meeting," Emma reported. "Major investors are demanding his resignation. The FBI just announced an investigation into corporate fraud." "And the women?" Sophia asked weakly. "The others?" "Coming forward," Olivia answered, adjusting Sophia's IV. "Catherine's team has been working with them for weeks. Your evidence gave them the courage to speak out." The television showed a press conference where Dr. Lisa Chen, one of James's earlier victims, stood with tears in her eyes. "He didn't just take my research and my career. He took my confidence, my sense of self-worth. Today we take it all back." More women appeared on screen, doctors, researchers, executives, each sharing similar stories of manipulation, abuse, and professional destruction. The pattern was undeniable, the evidence overwhelming. Olivia's phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. James just tried to board his private jet. FBI stopped him at the airport. It's over. Not quite, Olivia murmured, thinking of the long road ahead. Healing these wounds, personal and professional, would take time. The door opened and Sarah entered, carrying fresh scan results. "Tumor margins are clear, Sophia. The innovative approach worked. Dr. Bennett, you've done it again." "We did it," Olivia corrected, including both Sarah and Sophia in her gesture. This was about all of us working together. On the television, Eleanor Richardson was being escorted from the company headquarters, her perfect composure cracking as reporters shouted questions about her role in covering up her son's crimes. "I should feel guilty," Sophia said quietly, watching her former ally's disgrace. "But all I feel is relief. Is that wrong?" "No," Emma answered firmly. "You helped stop him. Your testimony, your evidence. You chose to break the cycle." A new alert flashed across the screen. Breaking: Richardson Technologies Board announces CEO's immediate termination. Accompanying the headline was a photo of James being led from his office in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face contorted with rage. He looked directly at the cameras, and even through the screen, his eyes burned with familiar menace. "He'll try to rebuild," Sophia warned, shivering despite the warm room. "He always does." "Not this time," Olivia said, her voice steel. "Catherine's team didn't just expose his crimes. They've frozen his assets, seized his documents, and most importantly, united his victims." On screen, the story shifted to coverage of the medical patents. Legal experts explained how James had systematically stolen innovations from brilliant women, using marriage and manipulation to claim ownership of their work. Richardson Technologies' medical division was built on stolen research, a commentator explained. Dr. Olivia Bennett's neural interface breakthroughs alone are worth billions. The company's entire foundation is based on intellectual property theft. "Your surgery," Sophia realized, touching her bandaged head. "The technique you used to save me, that was part of the stolen research." "Yes," Olivia confirmed. "But now it's back where it belongs. The hospital's already implementing it to help other patients with inoperable tumors." Another alert: multiple criminal charges filed against James Richardson III. The list scrolled across the screen: domestic violence, corporate fraud, witness intimidation, medical ethics violations, tax evasion, money laundering. The empire he'd built on others' broken dreams was crumbling. Sarah's phone chimed. "Hospital board's calling an emergency session. They want to officially reinstate you as head of neurosurgery, Olivia, with a public apology for believing James's lies." "Tell them I'll consider it," Olivia said, checking Sophia's vitals, "after my patient recovers." "Why did you really help me?" Sophia asked, her voice thick with emotion. "After everything I did." "Because healing is stronger than hatred," Olivia answered simply, "and because every woman James tried to destroy deserves a chance to rebuild." The television showed more victims coming forward, their stories creating a tsunami of revelations. James's carefully constructed image of the brilliant, charitable CEO was being replaced by the truth. A predator who targeted gifted women, using their talents to build his empire while systematically breaking their spirits. "Dr. Bennett," a nurse appeared at the door. "There's a call from the Nobel Committee. They want to discuss your neural interface research." Emma laughed at Olivia's surprised expression. Did you really think revolutionizing neurosurgery would go unnoticed once James couldn't take credit? On screen, the coverage turned to the broader implications. Tech industry experts discussed the Richardson effect. How many brilliant women had been driven from the field by similar predators? Medical ethicists called for systematic changes in how patents were protected. Domestic violence advocates praised the victim's courage in coming forward. "It's bigger than just James now," Sarah observed. "This is becoming a movement." Olivia's phone lit up with messages from other doctors, researchers, and survivors, all sharing similar stories, all finding courage in the truth finally being exposed. "I need to make a statement," she realized, "not just about James, but about the system that protected him." "Are you sure?" Emma asked. "You don't owe them anything." "I owe it to every woman who's been silenced," Olivia said firmly, "and to every woman who might be targeted next." Catherine's message appeared. "Press conference arranged whenever you're ready. But first, CNN wants to interview all of you together, the surgeon, the whistleblower, and the support team that brought down a predator." Sophia reached for Olivia's hand. "Tell them yes. Let's show other women they're not alone." Outside the clinic windows, the Swiss Alps stood eternal and unchanging, while in the valley below the world was transforming. News helicopters circled, reporters gathered, and the truth continued to spread like wildfire. "James once told me he made me," Olivia said quietly. "He was wrong. We made ourselves, and now we'll help other women do the same." Her phone buzzed one final time, a message from James's prison cell. "You've destroyed everything." "No," she typed back. "We've just begun to build." Chapter 11. Justice Serves. The federal courthouse in San Francisco stood imposing against the morning fog, its steps crowded with reporters and cameras. 6 months after the media explosion, justice was finally being served. Olivia adjusted her silk blazer, feeling the weight of the moment. "Ready?" Emma squeezed her hand. They'd flown in from Switzerland the previous night, leaving Sophia in the care of Sarah's medical team. "More than ready," Olivia replied, spotting Catherine waiting at the top of the steps with a team of lawyers. Today wasn't just about her divorce proceedings. It was about federal charges, corporate fraud, and most importantly, the dozens of women James had victimized over the years. They would all testify one after another, breaking years of enforced silence. Inside the courtroom, Olivia saw him for the first time since her escape. James Richardson III, once the polished tech CEO, now wore an orange jumpsuit. His carefully maintained image had crumbled during months in federal detention. But his eyes, they still burned with the same controlling rage. "All rise," the bailiff called as Judge Maria Rodriguez entered. A Latina woman in her 60s, she'd been specifically chosen for her track record in corporate fraud and domestic violence cases. "Before we begin," Judge Rodriguez addressed the packed courtroom, "let me be clear. This is not just about one man's crimes. This is about systemic abuse of power in corporate America, about how wealth and influence have been used to silence victims. Today, we hear their voices." The proceedings began with corporate fraud charges. Financial experts detailed how James had stolen patents, manipulated research credits, and used Richardson technologies to enrich himself while destroying careers. The neural interface technology alone, testified Dr. Marcus Way from the Patent Office, represents billions in stolen intellectual property. Dr. Bennett's original research, conducted years before meeting the defendant, was systematically appropriated through marriage and coercion. James's lawyers tried to interrupt, but Judge Rodriguez shut them down. "The court has reviewed the evidence. The timestamps on Dr. Bennett's original work are irrefutable." Then came the parade of witnesses, women whose lives James had manipulated and destroyed. Dr. Lisa Chen described how he'd stolen her cancer research. Dr. Rachel Martinez detailed his sabotage of her pharmaceutical patents. Each story followed a pattern. Brilliant women targeted, isolated, abused, and professionally ruined. "He told me I was nothing without him," testified Dr. Sarah Thompson, a former neurology researcher, "that no one would believe me over him, and for years he was right." During a brief recess, Catherine pulled Olivia aside. "Sophia's video testimony is next. Are you sure you want to watch?" "I need to," Olivia said firmly. "We all do." The courtroom screens lit up with Sophia's face, recorded from her hospital bed in Switzerland. Despite her surgical scars, she spoke with clear conviction, detailing years of manipulation and abuse. "I became his weapon," she admitted, tears flowing. "He turned me into an instrument of destruction against other women. Dr. Bennett didn't just save my life with her revolutionary surgery. She showed me there was another way to be strong." James shifted in his seat, his mask slipping further as his former accomplice exposed every detail of his systematic abuse. "The defendant didn't just abuse his wives and girlfriends," Sophia continued. "He created a culture of fear and silence at Richardson Technologies. Anyone who questioned him disappeared, careers ruined, reputations destroyed." The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showed millions spent on private investigators, hush money, and professional sabotage. Email trails revealed coordination with corrupt medical boards to discredit whistleblowers. Security footage from the Richardson mansion captured multiple incidents of physical violence. "The prosecution calls Dr. Olivia Bennett," Catherine announced. Olivia walked to the witness stand, feeling James's burning gaze. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She'd faced her demons in Switzerland, found her strength in healing rather than hatred. "Dr. Bennett," Catherine began, "please tell the court about the night of March 15th. Olivia described the discovery of James's affair, the confrontation, the first strike that shattered their marriage's facade. She detailed the escalating abuse, the pregnancy, the impossible choice she'd made to protect her unborn child from a toxic legacy. "He didn't just hit me," she explained, her voice steady. "He tried to erase me, every achievement, every innovation, every part of my identity. He claimed it all as his own." "And the neural interface patents?" Catherine prompted. "I developed the core technology during my residency, years before meeting James. The documentation is clear. Timestamps, research notes, surgical videos. He married me to steal my work, just like he'd done to others before me." James's lawyers attempted to paint Olivia as a vindictive wife, but her evidence was irrefutable. Hospital records, research papers, and patent applications predating their relationship proved her claims. Then came the financial testimony. Forensic accountants detailed how James had hidden assets, manipulated stock prices, and used corporate funds for personal vendettas. Richardson Technologies' entire medical division, testified CIA analyst Robert Chen, was built on stolen intellectual property. The defendant systematically targeted brilliant women, used marriage or relationships to claim their innovations, then destroyed them professionally when they resisted. The testimony continued for hours. Security experts described James's surveillance network. Hospital administrators admitted to being pressured into discrediting victims. Former Richardson Technologies employees revealed a culture of fear and retaliation. Finally, Judge Rodriguez addressed James directly. "Would you like to make a statement before sentencing?" He stood, straightening his jumpsuit with the same arrogance he once adjusted his designer suits. "Everything I did was for the company. These women, they were nothing before me. I gave them opportunities, resources, connections. Their work belonged to me because I made them what they are." A murmur of disgust rippled through the courtroom. Olivia felt Emma's hand squeeze her shoulder in support. "Mr. Richardson," Judge Rodriguez's voice cut like steel, "your statement perfectly illustrates the hubris that brought us here. You didn't make these women. You tried to break them, but in doing so, you've only proved their strength." The judge turned to address the courtroom. "Let this case serve as a warning. No amount of wealth or power puts you above the law. No corporate shield can protect you from accountability." The sentencing was comprehensive. 25 years in federal prison, complete forfeiture of assets, permanent ban from serving as a corporate officer. The Richardson family's empire, built on stolen dreams and broken lives, was officially dismantled. "Furthermore," Judge Rodriguez continued, "all stolen patents are hereby returned to their rightful inventors. Dr. Bennett's neural interface technology, along with all other misappropriated innovations, will be credited to the brilliant women who created them." As James was led away in handcuffs, he turned to glare at Olivia one final time, but she wasn't looking at him anymore. She was watching the other survivors, women who'd found their voices, reclaimed their power, and joined together to expose the truth. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Catherine handled the legal details while Olivia addressed the deeper message. "Today isn't just about one man's crimes," she said into the forest of microphones. "It's about breaking the silence that protects abusers. It's about showing other women that they're not alone, that their voices matter, that their innovations deserve recognition." Her phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Sophia's awake and following the news. She says truth really does set you free." As the sun broke through the San Francisco fog, Olivia felt the weight of years lifting from her shoulders. Justice had been served, but more importantly, a system of abuse had been exposed and dismantled. "What now?" Emma asked as they left the courthouse. Olivia thought of her patients in Switzerland, of the lives her reclaimed research could save, of all the women still fighting similar battles. "Now," she smiled, "we rebuild, but this time we do it together." Chapter 12. Reckoning and Redemption. 1 year later, Olivia stood at the podium of the World Medical Conference in Geneva, looking out over a sea of faces. Her neural interface technology had saved hundreds of lives, including Sophia's, and revolutionized the treatment of inoperable brain tumors. "Today," she began, "I want to talk about healing, not just bodies, but spirits, about how sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest source of strength." In the front row sat her support system, Emma, who'd never left her side, Sarah, who'd helped pioneer the new surgical techniques, and Sophia, now cancer-free and running a foundation for survivors of corporate abuse. Catherine sat nearby, having just finished establishing an international legal network to protect women in tech and medicine. James watched the broadcast from his prison cell, his empire dismantled, his power broken. His mother had fled to Europe, his family name tarnished. But more importantly, his pattern of abuse had been exposed and stopped. "We all carry scars," Olivia continued, touching her wedding ring finger, now bare but stronger. "Mine led me to develop techniques that now save lives, because that's the truth about survival. It's not just about escaping darkness, but about transforming it into light for others." She unveiled the New Women in Medical Innovation initiative, funded by the recovered Richardson assets. It would provide support, legal protection, and resources to brilliant women pursuing breakthrough research. "From the ashes of abuse, we build sanctuaries of strength. From the ruins of control, we create networks of support. This isn't just my story, it's ours, all of ours." Later that evening, in a quiet moment at the celebration dinner, Sophia handed Olivia a letter. Inside was the ultrasound photo from that lost pregnancy, saved all this time. "I kept it," Sophia said softly, "to remind myself what real strength looks like. Not the power to destroy, but the courage to protect, even when it breaks your heart." Olivia touched the photo gently, remembering her hardest choice. Sometimes love means letting go. And sometimes, Emma added, wrapping an arm around her friend. It means holding on to those who help you rebuild. In her hotel room that night, Olivia wrote her final reflection. Dear reader, this story isn't just about domestic violence, corporate abuse, or professional theft. It's about the strength that lives in every heart, waiting to be awakened. It's about how our deepest wounds can become our greatest gifts to others. To every person facing their own James Richardson, you are not alone. Your voice matters. Your dreams deserve to soar. Don't let anyone dim your light or steal your power. Remember, true strength isn't in controlling others, but in lifting them up. Real power isn't in breaking spirits, but in healing them. And love, genuine love, never requires you to make yourself smaller. Your scars are not your shame. They are proof of your resilience. Your struggles are not your weakness. They are the forge of your strength. And your story, however dark some chapters may be, is not over until you write the ending. Rise, heal, and help others rise. That's how we change the world, one restored spirit at a time. With hope and solidarity, Dr. Olivia Bennett. Her phone lit up with messages from survivors around the world, each sharing their own story of escape and renewal. The movement she'd helped spark was growing, changing lives, breaking cycles of abuse. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles for justice. But tonight, Olivia looked out over the lights of Geneva, the city where she'd found her healing and felt at peace. She had transformed her pain into purpose, her trauma into triumph. And somewhere, she felt certain her unborn child was proud of the choice she'd made. The choice to break the chain of abuse, to choose healing over hatred, to help others find their light in the darkness. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. For her, for Sophia, for every person finding the courage to reclaim their power and rewrite their story. Because sometimes the most powerful words in any story are not the end, but rather, and then she rose. The end. A message to readers. To anyone facing abuse, whether physical, emotional, or professional, you deserve better. Your dreams matter. Your voice counts. Help is available, and you are stronger than you know. To those who've survived, your story can light the way for others. Share your truth, extend your hand, be the support you needed in your darkest hours. And to everyone, watch for the James Richardsons of the world, those who build their success on broken spirits and stolen dreams. Stand up, speak out, and protect each other. Because together we can break the cycle of abuse and build a world where brilliance is nurtured, not exploited. Remember, the greatest power isn't in destroying others, but in helping them heal and shine. Your story isn't over. Make it count.